Scott, can you hear me? Scott, can you hear me?
I can, yep.
Okay, I'm going to put you on mute.
Okay.
Seeing at 6 p.m., I'd like to call the December 18th regular meeting of the Kenai City Council to order. And if you are able, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel.
Here.
Councilmember Peterkin is here. Councilmember Glendenning. Here. Councilmember Petty.
Here.
Vice Mayor Malloy.
Here.
Councilmember Navar.
Here.
Councilmember Naxtet.
Here.
Mayor Gabriel, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening. Before we get to agenda approval, Council, I'd like to draw your attention to a laydown you should have in front of you with several requested revisions to the agenda packet. Action, add to item G2, purchase orders over $15,000, new PO list including waste pumps replacement, and a memo regarding wasting pumps replacement requested by the city manager. And a clerk's note, it may be the wish of the council to pull item G2 from the consent agenda due to the addition. It is not required. Add item O2, information items 12/2019 CERCAC update requested by the city clerk. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Malloy, or Vice Mayor Malloy, rather.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Move to approve the agenda with the requested revisions to the agenda and packet listed by the mayor, requesting unanimous consent.
Second.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection from council? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. And that brings us to the consent agenda. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Naxton.
I move for approval of the consent agenda, request unanimous consent.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any amendments to the consent agenda? In a moment, the clerk will read the items on the consent agenda. After she is finished, you will have an opportunity to testify on them. This is to the public. All items will either be approved or will introduce an item and set its public hearing. Clerk, please read the consent agenda.
On our consent agenda tonight, under new business, we have action approval bills to be ratified brought forth by the administration. Approval of purchase orders over $15,000 brought forth by the administration. Approval for the non-objection to new liquor license for Los Compadres Mexican Restaurant LLC brought forth by the city clerk, and approval of a special use permit to Schilling Alaska Inc. doing business as the Uptown Motel for snow storage brought forth by the administration, and that is your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anyone from the general public that would like to speak to any item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Are there any objections to approval of the consent agenda? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. And that brings us to scheduled public comments. We have Project Homeless Connect here to give a presentation. Miss Maggie Winston, update on homeless in Kenai, and invitation to the Project Homeless Connect event.
I do not look like Maggie.
I was just going to say,
Maggie got a new job, and so you get to see my smiling face today.
could you go ahead and just introduce yourself for folks?
Okay, so my name is Jody Stewart. Thank you, council members, Mayor Gabriel, for having me today. I am the publicity chair for Kenai Peninsula Project Homeless Connect, and I have been for quite some time now. I have been before you before, and so I'm going to give you guys an update in regards to our event. As I've stated in many presentations to the council before, this is a one-day event where it's a one-stop shop situation for individuals experiencing homelessness and near homelessness to come and receive services and the things that they need, and be able to get referrals on the spot. Our goal with this event is to bring it to your attention because the concept of homelessness is not just the service folks' problem. It's all of our problems. And so hopefully by bringing it to your attention, you can help us to really make this not just only a city-led, which thank you for your support every year. I do appreciate it, as well as the committee does, but community-led. So we want to make sure that everybody's aware about the event, what it does, and how we support our folks that are very vulnerable. So through this partnership that we have, I'm happy to announce that not only is the City of Kenai been a longstanding partner, but now the City of Soldotna has joined ranks with you guys, and now we are all partners together to make this project happen. So I'm happy to say that we are moving forward with our other cities to make better will with that. In keeping in mind in your planning and in the things that you do as a city council, I'd like to remind you guys to think about those individuals that are homeless and near homeless when you make ordinances, when you vote on certain appropriations, things that may affect them. Keep that in the back of your mind. It's really important for this group to continue to move forward if you guys can assist us in that process. For instance, when it comes to ordinances in regards to city camping, when we have ordinances that say you can't camp on a certain place at a certain time, and then you move them off, where do you move them to? Is it just outside of your city limits? Is it, just from one parking lot to another? I hope that you'll take this moment in time to think about those processes of your ordinances and kind of what the ramifications are. Because it doesn't just affect the people, but it also affects the service providers that provide a service. It also affects other agencies that have to deal with this population. So San Francisco was the very first one. They've been doing it. And we don't do anything on our own because we like to steal ideas from places that have done it successfully. So again, this is really the idea of everybody coming together and partnering. So the services we provide on that day include massage therapy, haircuts, which is what everybody pretty much remembers about the event, because a person can walk in the doors looking one way, and when they walk out, they are a completely different person. So that's really the one moment in time that we can really target and say, I know that this event has helped because it's something we see. But we do more than that. We provide a food pantry, we provide comfort kits, things for folks to take with them, hats, gloves, socks, all the major necessities that a person needs, and then we provide access to all of the social services that are in our community. This coming year, we're looking at actually having Social Security on board. We are also looking at having carts on board, which is our public transportation. This is the first time that they'll be participating, so we are moving in the right direction. And it's not because I'm also a board member of CARTS that that's the reason why it's happening, although I can't confirm nor deny. So pretty much everybody wants to hear about the data. So here in this section, it really shows the trends in time. So from 2012, when we first started, to now, and this last project was in January of this year, you can see that the number of participants is fluctuating, but the number of people in households has grown. And so a lot of folks get a little confused by this number because it seems a little disparaging. When we say the number of participants, sometimes members of their household can't attend, meaning husband may show up to the event and he might account for a wife and 2 children at home. So the number of people affected really is double the person that actually shows up. So what you see here, the number in household, is really and truly the number of people touched by it. Here we have our male, female, and disability trends through time. Disabilities have always kind of been up there, and it's always interesting to see, kind of where our folks are in regards to participants. It tends to be equally men and women that you'll see at the event, so there's not much difference there. When they are coming into the event, we ask them, okay, where are you staying? Are you with friends and family? Are you in a place that's not habitable? Or are you in an emergency shelter? And you can see that for the most part, friends and family is the number one reason why people are experiencing homelessness. That's where they stay. And the rest of it is because they're someplace that's not habitable. By not habitable, it means that it is transitioning. Could be a tent, could be an outhouse, it could be a shed. It's not where normal people would reside. Doesn't have working water, sewer, may have holes in places, all sorts of issues that make it. So the reasons why people have lost housing is, number one, always going to be loss of job, and a second portion to that will always be some level of loss of income. That could be they lost their disability. It could be that they had a spouse that was taking care of them and recently had passed. Those types of loss of income occur often enough. And evictions, divorces, other reasons why people experience housing issues, domestic violence is always a concern. So this trend is the services that they receive. So we want to know, is the event that we're doing helping people? And 2, are the people that we're helping feeling like they are members of the community, people that matter? Because one of the things that is always a concern is individuals that are experiencing any type of marginalized aspects often feel alone, disconnected, they don't get involved, which leads to bad health outcomes. It results in contact with law enforcement and the criminal justice system, and overall it's fairly negative. So for the most part, the people that come to this event find our services helpful, they feel like they're treated with respect, and surprisingly enough, over 50% every single year is the first time they've attended an event, meaning that they've never been to an event before, and it's the first time that they've actually walked in the doors for this purpose. That being said, a lot of folks do ask what happens to people after our event. Do they find housing? We don't have a way to track that. If we did, would, but because our folks are so transient, they may go up to Anchorage and find housing. They could go to Fairbanks, Ketchikan, all over the state, let alone the lower 48. So we don't really have a good way of tracking, but we can say, 50% might say it's their second time, and that's kind of the reoccurrence, that trends that we're looking at. So to extrapolate what happened this last year, leading up into our 2020 event, we had 126 individuals participate, but that accounted for 318 people. 11% were U.S. military veterans, because I care about animals. 6 pets received services that included immunizations and referrals to the Spay and Neuter Fund, so that's always a good thing. In addition, I do want to bring to your attention that 89% of participants stated they would use a cold weather shelter. There is a cold weather shelter group currently organizing to facilitate churches in our local areas. Each church would take a night, and they'll be open if the temperature drops 20 degrees or lower. If the weather is, one day 20 degrees, next day 35, it would only be open on the nights that's 20 degrees and colder. So we've taken this statistic really close to the heart, and we are finding solutions for that. But overall, what I would like to say is that we need a one location, because transportation is one of our biggest barriers. So getting people to all the various churches that have volunteered is going to be a struggle initially. It's not going to stop us, but ultimately we would like to have one location in order for folks to know we can come here every single night if it's 20. These are comments that concern us. One day a year is not enough. Pathetic. We need a shelter in the community, transportation, need buses, concerns of services that weren't provided, transportation, Red Cross, OCS, Social Security. Pretty much the overwhelming response is we need this more than once a year. I would love to say that we can do it, but the amount of resources that are put into this one-time event every year is a lot. And the participants don't see that back end side of how much goes into it. And I appreciate their comments, as does the committee. And we've been talking for years on doing a duplicate event. Instead, this is going to be the very first year, 2020, where Homer does their own event and Seward will be doing their own event. So we're going to see what that does to ours, if that's going to change the amount of people coming in, and we'll really be able to look at our central Kenai community, Kenai Soldotna area, and K Beach, Nikiski, Sterling, if that's our population, and whether or not it's impacted by coming up Homer or Seward. So that's good news. It's something that the community has stepped up to do in those locations, and it may take some of the stress off of us. And then, last but not least, this is our 9th year. We've been doing it for a while. We're making great strides. We're moving forward with a lot of good momentum. We're getting volunteers trained in order to work with this population. We invite you yet again to come join us, have a meal with these folks, sit down, hear their stories, find out why they're having problems, find out what the people in your community is really having an issue, and hear it from their point of view. And again, I'd like to remind you that when you hear these stories, keep that in mind when you make policies, ordinances, and determine if those decisions that you're making will impact them negatively, and maybe how we can respond otherwise. So again, I invite you January 29th, 9 to 3, or for lunch.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, George. Does anybody have any questions? Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes, one line item on your slide talked about shelter housing. Are you talking about like a bunkhouse? Or are you talking like something that maybe is on the North Road, on the edge of our town? Are you talking about Section 8 housing? Are you talking about a place where there's structured communal living, or maybe setting aside duplexes and fourplexes for families? What is the scope of your intent?
So the intent right now is strictly a cold weather shelter, meaning getting people off of the streets when the temperature goes below 20. They will be housed in area churches in a cot-like situation. This is to ensure that we don't have anyone exposed to the elements. Ultimately, yes to all of those things that you mentioned. That is always going to be the ultimate goal. And also, ultimately, we would like to see more low-income housing. If we can get folks to buy into that, we would be happy to do so as well. But this is strictly just a temporary solution for a long-term problem. The ultimate goal is to have a centralized location for a shelter. And by shelter, do I mean Brother Francis? Maybe. I don't know what's going to be good for our community, but that's something that we're looking into. What does that one-stop location look like? Is it going to be a bunkhouse? It's certainly not going to be something like Friendship Mission, because they have a role that they, that's the one out towards Wildwood. Freedom House in Soldotna for both men and women, that has its role to play. So this would be a general, we're going to accept you where you are, how you are. which is very different from those facilities offer. So we have to keep working at it to find out what the final outcome.
Any other questions of Ms. Stewart? Councilmember Navarre.
I was, in your charts here, I was surprised to find that a majority of them have medical insurance. Is that Medicaid? Is that primarily the reason why? I mean, I was surprised with that number, 90% of, said yes and the other said no,
I
or
would
10%.
absolutely say Medicaid expansion has increased that number exponentially. Before that number used to be 10, maybe 12%. So
Kind of reverse from what it is. All right. No problem, thanks. And did you tell people when the date is? Remind them again, I know it's October or January
January
29th. Yeah,
9 to 3 at the Salado Sports Complex.
thanks.
Councilmember Peterkin.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I saw your presentation at the chamber as well and appreciated it. We do take in consideration the homeless people, and our police department behind you also does. And they, as Mr. Ross has told us, they know most of them and give them rides and even sometimes buy them dinner. But nevertheless, we also have a huge opiate addiction on the peninsula, and we have a lot of people at our parks, and we did have to put time frames on some of them so that our officers could address that problem. Because if we don't have a policy, then they can just be there whenever they want, and we really can't ask them to leave. But I do think we took that in very strong consideration when we put time frames on those, and we are looking into a lot of different. We know it's an issue, and we're definitely looking into it. So do know that we're not turning a blind eye to it.
Any other questions, Ms. Stewart? I do have a question. As I was looking through the information you provided here, you had prior Homeless Project Connect events attended, and you had, first time 56%, like you mentioned. But then, if you dig a little bit deeper into that, first time was 35 on frequency, and then it dropped off pretty dramatically after that. Do you have an idea, or do you have put your thumb on? I mean, apparently you're not getting a lot of repeat customers here over the years. Would that be a true assessment? Do you know what's happening there?
It's hard to put a complete answer to that. We like to think because the folks that do show up to Project Homeless Connect every year, they get referred to appropriate services. And then once that referral process starts, people can navigate the system a little bit easier, because people tend to do better when they can see who I'm talking to. They know, oh, that's Joe over at PCHS. I'm going to go talk to him. Or I met this guy at Project Homeless Connect. I know that they're a resource and I can go talk to them. That makes a big difference to this population. So I think that's part of it, is suddenly they have faces and names that are consistent that they can go to in order to receive the services that they need. I also think that we have a substantial transient population in our state. This is an issue that is not just for us. We have folks that move around often. During my day job with people coming out of incarceration, they go from Anchorage to Fairbanks to here, Juneau, and honestly, it's amazing how much they travel. I honestly don't get to Anchorage all that often, and I don't comprehend it, but for them, traveling is part of their everyday life. So I think that's the other portion to this. They may be experiencing homelessness in Anchorage, but just so happen to be down in our area for a little bit. Some people may get incarcerated down here, get released down here, but they're really for Fairbanks. So I think it's a lot of that kind of combination, just because of the transient nature of this population.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a bad statistic, because, I mean, in some ways you could look at, I just sort of wonder where it was going, if it was people that were, we weren't growing that population, or if they're just being pushed somewhere else. I guess that's what I was going.
I think to some extent it is a little bit of it being pushed elsewhere around the state.
Okay. Any other question? Councilmember Glendenning?
Yes, so we have a census coming up next year, And are you involved with some effort to try and get a head count on the people?
So there is an effort to have that be one of the vendors for this coming year, so that way they'll have the information and be able to have that conversation.
You'd be a vendor?
I'm not the vendor, no, but there will be a vendor that addresses the census. There's a volunteer that is through the food bank that got the training for being a census person, so she's planning, well, I can just tell you what she told me, so she's planning on being there as a vendor to do that process.
Yeah, the reason I'm mentioning that is because there's a financial quotient to this, and if it's wherever you are, and was it March 1st, April 1st, something like that, and there are funds available to governments, and part of these funds can be used for what you're outlining here, and so it's very important that we get a head count on these folks. They'll ultimately be helping themselves and make our decisions easier up here.
And we absolutely understand that, because also the HUD funding is directly tied to the count that happens on that day. So our service agencies that rely on HUD funding, like the Lee Shore Center, Love Inc., and some housing organizations wouldn't receive that funding if we don't do an accurate count.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Stewart? I guess I could defer to the city clerk that you're doing a drive. So do you want to say a few things about that while we're on the subject?
Sure. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to have to go from memory, but the Kenai City Clerk's Office and the Soldotna City Clerk's Office is combining efforts and seeking volunteers to put together care packages, which would include shampoo, conditioner, bar soap, a couple snacks, hot chocolate, whatever. And then those items, we're trying to put together, I believe, 200 this year and provide them to the Project Homeless Connect. And I believe we're putting them together on the week before. I think it's the 23rd here at the Kenai Library.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Councilmember Peterkin.
Jamie, do you need anything from us? Do you need money or anything?
Sure. We can talk afterwards.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
Thank
Appreciate you taking the time, and I imagine we'll get some follow-up information on the data that's collected this year, too.
Absolutely.
Very good.
That's what I'm here for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no other scheduled public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to address the council on any item that's not on the agenda or consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to our public hearings. Under item D1, ordinance number 3098-2019, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the general fund, police department, and amending Kenai Municipal Code section 23.25.040, appointee compensation, 23.25.065, shift differential pay, 23.50.010, employee classification, and 23.55.030, qualification pay to improve recruitment and retention for police officers and other eligible employees receiving shift differential pay. And this was brought forth by administration. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move to approve move to enact ordinance 3098, 2019.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3098-2019? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. And I guess at this point, there's probably going to be some questions, so I'll have, if Paul doesn't mind, do a little overview from administration, and that might answer some questions, or preempt questions, rather. Mr. Ostrander.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So the ordinance in front of you tonight is really the culmination of an effort that started back in September of 2018. I first met with the officers of our police department then, and we talked at the time about some of the stressors that we were seeing within the state and really nationwide as far as officer compensation. And one of the things that drove the discussion was some of the recent changes that the state has made. Significant pay increases for the Alaska State Troopers over the last couple of years, actually starting under the Walker administration and continuing under the Dunleavy administration. And so it became evident that we needed to look at this closely. One of the things that we've seen over the past, certainly 3 years since I've been here, and before that, is we're having a very difficult time both recruiting and retaining officers. We've been understaffed here, and particularly lately over the last 6 months or so. All of our officers have been working a significant amount of additional overtime to cover for a shortage of 3 to 4 officers over that time period. So it was obvious that there was an issue, that we needed to look at how we were compensating our officers to make sure that we could effectively recruit and then also retain our more experienced officers. So again, what you see in front of you is a culmination of what amounts to probably 15 or 16 months of effort. So after that first meeting that we had, we actually hired a consultant to do a pay study. That pay study actually failed. We ended up removing the consultant, terminating the contract. They were not providing the information that we needed. So then at that point I tasked Stormy Brown and Chief Ross with looking at this, and it took them quite a bit of time mixed amongst their other duties, their normal job, to look at this and really come up with what made sense as far as compensation changes. So we came up with a whole menu of items to consider, and out of those, the ones, again, on this ordinance tonight are the ones that we think make the most sense. So if you look at the memo that actually starts on page 9, I think that memo captures most of what we're doing here and answers most of the questions that I think council would have. So the primary things that we're doing here, the first is that this ordinance provides the city manager authorization to provide bonuses upon hiring. There's 2 types of bonuses that we could provide. One would be a bonus for a lateral officer that's coming from within the state of Alaska. This authorizes the city manager to offer up to a $20,000 bonus that would be paid over a 4-year period. The other second type of bonus would be a bonus for a lateral officer that's coming from out of the state of Alaska. That one would be for up to $10,000 and would also be given to the officer over a period of 4 years. This actually results in a cost savings to the city because we avoid the costs associated with the training for the academy, which is $13,500 per officer. So it's a cost savings in the first year. Over the course of the 4 years that we pay out, we're actually paying slightly more for this lateral officer than if we had brought in a new officer. But the one thing that it doesn't account for in that is that this lateral officer will be able to begin work immediately for the department, rather than a brand new officer would take up to 12 months until they're independent and can operate on their own on the street. So that's the first portion, is the bonus. The second one is a shift differential pay. It increases it from 2% to 3% and 4% to 6%. This is standard. Stormy and Chief Ross both looked at departments across the state. This is a standard shift differential, so that's a change that this ordinance does. It also, we've created incentive pay that moves an officer from a patrol officer to a senior officer upon successful completion of their 5th year. So this moves them actually up a range from a 16 range to a 17 range. And what we found is that as we put in significant time and money into these officers, both through the academy and additional training, once they get to that 5-year period, to retain those more experienced officers, it was appropriate to move them up a range, to continue to incentivize them. That's more of the retention part of this picture rather than the recruitment part. We feel like moving those officers up to a senior officer provides some incentive for them to remain with the department. Because of that shift, you're seeing changes in the positions that are above the patrol or senior officers as well. We're proposing an increase to the police sergeant position from an 18 to a 19. That provides provides that difference between the senior officers and that sergeant, maintains that, so we don't have compression between those two. And then secondly, the lieutenant position is adjusted from paying range 20 to a 22. Again, that compression we're trying to avoid between the increased sergeant position and the lieutenant. There's a couple other things as well. One of them is recognition for a field training officer. So when a new officer comes on, we have a field training officer assigned to that individual. They are with that person the entire time they're on duty. So we basically have 2 officers that are together for a 3-month period. typically we find we have one officer that's with that trainee for 1 month, and then it changes to a second field training officer, and then for the third month to a third field training officer. During the period that they are field training officer, this ordinance proposes that they get a 5% increase in their base pay. Another recognition pay is for investigators. This is also a 5% increase. One of the reasons why that this was important is because most of the people that we want to be in our investigative position within the department are the most qualified of our officers. And when they take that position, they then lose the opportunity for shift differential pay and overtime. At least many of those opportunities, they lose those. So to compensate them for that and encourage them to move into that investigative role, this 5% increase will offset that. So all of these changes result in a total of $115,000 of additional appropriation that would be necessary in the out years. For the remainder of FY20, it's actually quite likely that even though this ordinance does appropriate an additional $13,000, it's likely that we won't have to spend that money. One of the reasons is because as of yesterday or the day before, Sarah Herron, one of our longer tenured officers, submitted her resignation. She's moving to the troopers. So that again is going to save some time in personnel because it's going to force other officers to work overtime. So we're likely not going to need this additional appropriation, or at least all of this additional appropriation that this ordinance covers. But going forward, our estimates is that this will cost $115,000 a year. One of the things that I think will probably be a question of council is this sustainable to increase the city's budget by $115,000 per year? It's my role with working with Terry Eubank and his department to provide a sustainable budget that meets the fund balance policy to council every year. And I'm committing right now that when you see the FY21 budget come out, assuming this ordinance passes, we will submit a budget that meets the fund balance policy and is sustainable for the city. So with that, if there's additional questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And I believe there was a suggested amendment to this, housekeeping amendment in the packet. Is that correct? I guess at this point it might be worth it to move that forward and get that out of the way if there's no objection from the body. Councilmember next then.
Okay, in our packet, Stormy Brown has provided a second memo, and it's at the end, and it includes the needed amendment. It's on page 16 of our packet, page 2 of 2 in her memo. It's under section 2355030. B1, 2, and it changes the second line. And I don't have in the memo here what the verbiage exactly was in there, but I want to delete the second line and replace with advance 1 and the number 1 in parentheses, pay grade from 16E to 17E.
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
Yes, that was a motion. Any discussion on the amendment? Did council follow that? It's under the...
Request unanimous consent.
Very well, thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the amendment passes. We now have ordinance number 3098, 2019 as amended before us. Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes, I will be supporting this ordinance. What I find is in the I'm looking at page 5 and page 7, the concept of recruitment of police officers, successful recruitment, I think is paramount in how we do business within that department. But what I really like is the concept and the idea of recognition pay for qualifications and skill advance. I think that gives a path forward for rewarding performers and for folks who will have the ability to dig into training that will be offered to them as part of their employment. And I just thank Chief and Stormy for bringing this to our attention, bringing it to us, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Councilmember Peterkin.
Yeah, I have two questions besides the obvious. I hope someone's protecting our streets right now since all officers are here. But, and thank you guys for coming. This is important. My first question is, when we bring in a new officer and offer him 13,000 or 20,000 or whatever Paul feels is appropriate at the time, that doesn't, I have issue if a new guy is making more than an existing guy. We're not creating that situation, are we?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Peterkin, is there a situation where a new officer with that signing bonus could be making more than an existing officer? I think that it is possible. It would be a short-term situation. I think in most cases, you know, if you have a more senior officer within the department, it would not be the case. The more senior officer would still be making more. Some of our less experienced, newer officers, it is possible that if we brought someone in with that signing bonus, that new officer would be making more. I will tell you that this only authorizes the city manager to do this, and there's likely instances where if we are having more success with recruitment and retention, that this incentive, this bonus, would not be necessary to keep us fully staffed.
Okay, thank you. One more follow-up question, and just as a comment to that would be that Stormy and you look into that, because we managing a lot of labor. I've paid the new guy more than the other guy, and that can be a real problem at times. The other thing, and you mentioned Sarah, who I've known since she was born, went to the troopers. Are we competitive with the troopers when we did that? When we kind of, you said that we fired the people that were doing the analysis, and then Mr. Ross and Stormy looked into that. Are the troopers paying way more than we are, or are we competitive, or what's going on here?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Peterkin. We're certainly, if this ordinance passes, we're more competitive. It really depends on what experience the officers have. There are certainly officers that work for the troopers that are more highly compensated than our officers. So if you look across the board, are we paying as much as the troopers are now? I would say probably we are not. I'd like to think that our department offers benefits that the troopers can't, that are maybe less tangible than pay. But if you look at it straight across the board as far as compensation, our compensation is not equivalent to theirs, certainly, and particularly with the more experienced officers.
Is it okay to follow up?
Yeah,
Mayor?
Councilmember Peterkin.
Well, I think I'm in complete favor of this, but I'm also, I don't know, this sounds weird. I like winning, I like being the best, and I like offering the best. So I just encourage us to not stop here and to continue this as we work towards our budget and getting even more competitive. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Any other comment? Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I support the ordinance, and I also appreciate the city manager's, emphatic statement that we will have a budget that's sustainable, that will keep this going forward in the future, which is it was good to hear that. Also want to thank our officers who are here, for all their hard work and all the overtime. Certainly difficult on them and on their families. We appreciate, I know all of us appreciate the efforts that you do for public safety, and certainly we're recognizing that here. And I think this is a really well thought out ordinance that addresses a lot of the issues in a comprehensive way, and I'm impressed by the work that went into it, and thank you for it.
Councilmember Naxton.
Yeah, I want to kind of echo what I'm hearing here too, and I do support it as well, and I want to, start out with thanking Chief Ross and Stormy Brown for all the work that I know that they put into this, as well as Terry, it probably has, and Paul, and I'd like to be able to give our officers more too, and I think that this provides us a framework to keep competitive as time goes on, as we work into this. It's a chip into the budget, and I think that in the future we can probably look at doing more as we need to, and we should. And I think that in addition to maintaining our competitiveness, what we really gain also is if we can keep the cohesiveness of the team. We have part of the team here right now, and I recognize most of them, and I appreciate seeing them. And new faces are good too, but I like seeing the team and seeing the team keep moving on and advancing. And if we can keep you guys and gals, and moving forward, that's a benefit to everybody, and not for the whole public, not just you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from Councilmember Petty?
Yes, I am in support of this ordinance, and I recognize the intense research and labor that went in to create this. I appreciate all the ladies and gentlemen of the force that came to be here tonight, and I appreciate all of your hard work and the sacrifices that you make to make sure that our city is safe and a lovely place to live for all the citizens that live here. And also, I appreciate the reassurance of the city manager that our budget will be in such order that this will not be a problem going forward. And I want our law enforcement officers to be the best of the best, and I think that they are, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councilmember Navarre.
Thank you. I too will be supporting this, not only for the retention part, but also for the ability to make sure we have good qualified police officers. One question I do have is on the class code, and I don't know if Stormy or that, but are we the police lieutenant is taking on the responsibility, and maybe they already somewhat do, of managing the animal control. But we also have a classification for deputy chief. And now the lieutenant will be higher than the deputy chief, and I'm just wondering if that's a concern or if, because I don't think we technically use that position, but maybe we do. I thought the lieutenant was classified, but does somebody have an answer for that, and if that's a concern in
Mr. Ostrander.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Navarre, the deputy chief is actually on the fire side. This includes...
not in the police. I didn't
Right.
think.
This
I knew
includes-
the lieutenant had always been, but that's why I was wondering, okay. That answers that question if it's for the police side. Thank you. I just didn't know if we were going to a deputy chief or not, and where that would go. So, all right, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? I'd just like to echo the comments made by my colleagues up here that I too will be supporting this, and I wish we could pay more, because I agree that we want to we want to have our officers out there that protect us, that feel respected, and hopefully you do, to the extent that we can pay. That's just a portion of our gratitude. Like I said, I wish we could be the highest paid in the state, to be honest with you. I know a lot of times it's like a Rubik's Cube. You're balancing a lot of things to make that happen. But and if things turn around, we get, there's things in this economy that could happen that could facilitate that would require us to even hire more officers, possibly. But I just want to say at this time that I appreciate all the hard work that you do to keep our community safe. Every time I turn on the news, it seems like there's something bad going on down in Anchorage, and I always get that sick feeling that I sure hope that doesn't, and to some degree I think it does on the drug side, migrate down our area. But not necessarily the violent crime part. And, I just as soon keep it that way, and paying a well-paid police force that feels respected is one way, in my opinion, to accomplish that. So I'll be supporting that. Seeing no other comments, clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Malloy?
Yes.
Councilmember Navar?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtat?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're now on item D2, ordinance number 3099-2019, amending Kenai Municipal Code Section 23.50.010, employee classification to amend class titles in the Public Works, Water, and Sewer and Wastewater classes. This is presented by administration. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Navar.
Yes. I move for the enactment of ordinance number 3099-2019.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to the council regarding ordinance number 3099-2019? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. And again, probably ask Mr. Ostrander to maybe give us a little bit of an overview here before we dive into deliberation.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. This will take less time to explain than the previous ordinance, but this is really the beginning of a restructuring of the Public Work Department water and sewer and wastewater side. So what this ordinance does is it creates an operator 1 and 2 position on the water and sewer side, which is our water plant and the sewer distribution. And then it also creates an operator 1 and 2 on the wastewater side, which is the wastewater treatment plant. What this allows us to do, right now we've got an operator position that is a range 13. This creates the operator 1 position, which is at a range 10. It allows us to bring folks in that are not as highly qualified as what we previously required, so they can have a provisional license, bring them in at a lesser pay scale, allow them to learn essentially on the job, get their necessary certification, and then eventually move into that operator 2 position as a grade 13. So it gives us more flexibility in recruitment. This is another area where recruitment can be very difficult. This will allow us to recruit easier than it has in the past. So it creates these operator 1 and 2 and allows us that flexibility to recruit. Just for the council's information, the next step of this is actually going to be restructuring in the supervisory portion of these departments as well. Right now, we've got 2 foremans in place, and it's the intent of administration to bring to council in the next several months an ordinance that would create essentially a utility manager and remove those 2 foreman positions. So this ordinance is going to result in a reduction in overall costs to the city, as will the next ordinance that creates the utility manager position will also result in a reduced cost. So in both cases, it's a net win as far as the amount of money it's going to cost the city, and it gives administration and the Public Works Department a lot more flexibility as far as recruitment there as well. Thank you.
Any deliberations, questions, comments? Councilman Glendenning.
Yes, I will be wholeheartedly supporting this. The water and sewer, wastewater treatment plant. These are all knowledge jobs. These are jobs that have to have quite a bit of in-depth knowledge and training, and I know if we have a more competitive process and packet here, and also the ability to attract someone with potential and give him the ability to grow and progress in his chosen field, we will have greater rates of retention. My only question is that when we hire someone, say at a grade 10, and they have to meet certain qualifications, is that something that you do online, or is there classes that are available, say over at the community college, or there's someone come on site and give instruction? How is that elevation and knowledge managed?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Council Member Glendenning. I'll actually ask Scott Curtin, Public Works Director, to answer that. He can answer it better than I can.
Mr. Curtin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Glendenning, it's actually a little bit of both. They do have some coursework that they do, and there are courses that are offered throughout the state. We actually just had one in Homer earlier this month that one of our new hires was able to attend and actually take one of those. It was a 4-day seminar, and then he was able to take 2 certification exams on the 5th day as part of that. So it is a little bit of both. There's some online coursework that you could do, and then the other part of the certification is actual on-the-job hours. So just because you pass a test doesn't mean you get the certification. You have to actually log hours, and it's generally a year. It's almost 2,000 hours of on-the-time job per certification that they have to log. So just because you pass a test today doesn't mean that you get the certification. You have to pass the exam and work in that category for roughly a period of a year.
Did that, Councilman Glendening?
Just to follow up on that, do we have it in our view at some point in time where we will have cross-training between the water and the wastewater treatment plant? I'm not talking about full tilt boogie certification, but at least be able to function as the new grade 10. So if something goes wrong, they're able to show up with knowledge and competency and help. Is that in our plan?
Sorry. Yes, that is absolutely in our plan. We have already started that. We have had one employee that has already been cross-training. One of the new hires that we just got within the last month is also participating in that. So my intentions are that we will do that full staff. We will have the ability for all members in the department to have some knowledge at all facilities. So my intentions wouldn't be to permanently place anyone there, but with anything that happens with individuals on vacation, people coming and going and things like that, to have that knowledge base that we could essentially plug and play those individuals as the city's needs arise. And we are actively doing that right now.
Thank you very much, Joe. That's a most excellent idea.
Thank you. Any other comments from Deliberation Council? Councilmember Nackstead.
Yeah, I think the cross-training is huge. It is in any organization, and certainly within, the ranks down there. That's good. I will be supporting this, but I just wanted, there is a house cleaning, keeping amendment that I'd like to make first, and might as well just get it done now, I suppose. But on page 19 of our packet, there's kind of a table of the public works positions, and they're enumerated, 401 through 420. If you guys get to that page there, don't get too far ahead, but there's 2 414s, and actually the second 414, wastewater treatment plant operator 2, level 13, it's actually a duplicate, so I'd like to delete the second 414, wastewater treatment plant operator.
Second?
Any discussion on the
Just
amendment?
question.
Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you. So is that redundant? Are we taking it out because it's redundant of 404?
It's included in 404 already.
Right. So it's kind of redundant.
Yeah, it is redundant.
Yep. Thank you.
100% redundant.
Yes.
Okay.
Request unanimous consent.
Very good. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection?
I guess I didn't follow.
So, if I may.
Yes.
So
Might be.
it's here, 404, and so this is redundant. See, they're both wastewater treatment plant operator 2. And so what we're doing is taking this one out, deleting it, because it's here. It's just a housekeeping thing. We don't need it twice. And the city manager could clarify that for you.
Any further, do you understand the amendment, Councilmember Navarre?
So you're taking out the 414.
The second,
Yes.
the second 414.
No, it'd be the
Yeah.
first one, or the second one, you're correct,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
The second 414, if I might, Mr. Navarre, is the same as 404. Exactly.
Sure, and the other question I get, yeah, no objection.
Very good. Any other discussion? Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection to that? On the amendment, yes. So the amendment is approved. So we have ordinance 3099-2019 as amended before us. Councilmember Navarre, you got your light
I was
on?
just wondering if some of the numbers should have been cleaned up to where they're kind of put in a format so that they're easy to do. It's like the last one we just went with, the police and the fire all in there and mixed and matched and one and the other. I would certainly like to see that if we can. It just, to me, makes easier clarification, but I'll let it go.
I see, I see Ms. Brown has her hand up. Maybe she could shed some light as to sure there's a reason why they're formulated like that. Ms. Brown?
Sure. Through the mayor, Councilman Navarre, it is an immediate fix right now because we have an open number. But we are going to need to do the rest of that department, meaning the supervisory lead and foreman position. Once we get it all in place, we'll be sure to clean it up and make sure it's in one row.
Very good. Council, we have 3099-2019 as amended before us. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Peterkin?
Yeah.
Councilmember Glendenning?
Aye.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Malloy?
Yes.
Councilmember Navarre?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtat?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're now on item D3, ordinance number 3100-2019, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $4,786.53 in the general fund, police department for drug investigation overtime expenditures brought forth by administration. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Naxtat.
Move to enact ordinance 3100, 2019.
Second?
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance 3100-2019? See none, we'll bring it back to council. Any discussion from council? See none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Malloy?
Yes.
Councilmember Navarre?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtat?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterkin?
Yes.
Motion passes.
We're on item D4, resolution number 2019-79, adopting an alternative allocation method for the FY20 shared fisheries business tax program and certifying that this allocation method fairly represents the distribution of significant effects of fishery business activity in FMA 14, Cook Inlet, brought forth by administration. Pleasure of council. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Move to approve resolution number 2019-79 and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Just objection for clarification.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Just a question, if and when we receive these funds, where are they
Well, yeah,
lodged?
let's go ahead and put it on the floor yet. Okay, yeah, because I haven't gone to the public for their. Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2019-79? Seeing none, Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes, if and when these funds are received as a function of our fishery activity, where is the money lodged in our budget? Does it go to the general fund, or is it maybe goes to some activity on the waterfront?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Glendenning. It goes into the general fund and at that point is available for utilization by the city in whatever manner the council deems appropriate.
Councilman Glendenning. Any other discussion? I'm not objecting to unanimous consent, but we do this every year, and I think we have from the 90s. I have a discussion with, and I think it's out of respect, my respect for Mr. Eubank, that I don't want to say, like, let's bow up and go the other route just to see what we get out of it. The money's not that much, but it sort of galls me. This is a shared fisheries tax, and I look at what like the Matsu Borough gets $2,400, Kenai Peninsula Borough gets $1,600, Kenai gets $700. And I know it was based on population more than, but it's some side of me. I'm not, I guess I'll leave it at that. I'm going to get spooled up here if I get to. So. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection?
We share your sentiments.
Okay. Seeing none, resolution number 2019-79 is adopted. Next, we're under item D5, resolution 2019-80, authorizing the city manager to enter into a vending machine concession agreement for the Kenai Municipal Airport, brought forth by administration. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxted.
Move for approval of resolution 2019-80, request unanimous consent.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2019-80? Seeing no one, bring it back to council. Comments, questions, deliberation from council? Seeing none, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2019-80 is adopted. D6 rather, I'm sorry, resolution number 2019-81, supporting the Alaska Municipal League's resolution number 22-2020, requesting the Alaska State Legislature approve a coastal infrastructure general obligation bond for the 2020 election. It's brought forth by Councilmember Jim Glendenning. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes, I move for adoption of resolution number 2019-81.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2019-81? Seeing no one, bring it back to council. Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes, what I will do is just read from my brief memo. This resolution mirrors that of the Alaska Municipal League resolution, and I believe the borough also has adopted a similar stance, and I believe Homer has also. But I'll read into the record my memo. The city maintains a dock and other public infrastructure in the city's harbor that have repair and maintenance needs. On October 22nd, 2019, the Alaska Municipal League passed and approved resolution number 22-2020, requesting the state legislature approve a coastal infrastructure general obligation bond for the 2020 election to address coastal infrastructure repair and maintenance. The Kenai Peninsula Borough recently unanimously passed resolution 219-63, supporting AML's endeavor. I request your support in passing resolution number 219-81.
Thank you, Councilmember Glendenning. Is there any other discussion on this? Councilmember Peterkin.
So, thank you, Jim, and I don't know who would answer this, but so money would come from the state or somewhere and make a fund? I just don't understand understand the other people that are supporting it, but.
I believe that the idea is to request that the legislature approve a general obligation bond. So in other words, that would be something that would be bonded, to bring the money, just much like we have a bond for the library,
Okay.
Yeah, for capital improvement projects, it was something that they've done in the past, actually.
Yeah, this is just a place marker for the budget for our folks in Juneau, and we're requesting that they do find the mechanism through a bonding initiative to help fund the unfunded mandate that has been given to us in the harbor.
Any further discussion on Councilmember Naxted?
Yeah, just reading through the resolution itself, I just kind of wanted to emphasize a couple of the whereases. The third one just points out that there's 72 ports and harbors in the state of Alaska facilities, and the second whereas I think is really important, and what it says in part is there's a critical need for coastal infrastructure repair and maintenance throughout Alaska, and the report card of Alaska's Infrastructure 2017 by the Alaska section of the American Society of Civil Engineers awarded a grade of D to Alaska ports and harbors. So if that's an overall grade, there's some lower ones, if that's the average. And I'm not sure where we fall in there, but we certainly have a port and a harbor, and we're in some need.
Any other discussion? Vice Mayor Malloy?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, I appreciate Councilmember Glendenning bringing this forward. I also support it. You know, recognize that our own harbor has infrastructure needs that, you know, we have issues with funding. So if we could be part of this bond package in the future, that would be beneficial. Thank you, Jim.
And I guess just circling back for Councilmember Peterkin, if you look at the third whereas from the bottom, it does kind of speak to some of the past history with bond packages that the state's approved since statehood. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Malloy.
Yes.
Councilmember Navar.
Yes.
Councilmember Nextet.
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterkin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're now on item D7, resolution number 2019-82, adopting the City of Kena's capital improvement plan priority list for state funding requests for fiscal year 2021, brought forward by administration. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Naxton.
Move to adopt resolution 2019-82.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2019-82? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council. Councilmember Naxton.
I just wondered if Mr. Ostrander might have some comments on the list and how they came. Obviously, the Bluff is number one. Do you have any input?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Naxted. Yeah, so this list was compiled. There was actually Public Works Director Scott Curtin and I and Christine Cunningham met and went through this list. And this list is really a compilation of items that has been compiled by multiple departments of the city. And what we tried to do here was include certainly what is the number one priority of council, which is the Bluff Stabilization Project, and really focus on that in the resolution itself and what some of the potential benefits of the state funding that, and then that they get the federal match associated with it. So really focusing on that, but also including projects. I think we've got a total of 12 projects here. From other projects that have been identified within the city that are high priority, but all the way down to smaller projects that are things that are needed in the city, that if a smaller capital budget is proposed by the legislature, that they have the opportunity to find projects really within a large range of capital dollars. So up from the $15,000 to the library shelving, all the way up to the request for the Bluff of $5 million.
Councilmember Navar.
Just a question on priority number 2. You know, I agree that it should be, and I understand the separation. I'd almost put 2 and 3 together if, in fact, we don't have an agreement. I'd hate to get the monies and then be struggling with getting either a maintenance agreement, and to me, that's probably something that's better than nothing, but at the same time, it's admitting that there's an ownership thing, which that's still arguably in dispute. But are we moving on it fairly quick so that otherwise I just hate putting stuff in when it might not, the money might come through because it's a small enough number, but if it doesn't give us flexibility to move it to another project or incorporate it within an existing group of funds, kind of break down 2 and 3 and break it into 3 sections, but essentially they fund us in priority 2 for $1.3 million, let's say, and yet it gives us some flexibility maybe there if we made a request, if we couldn't spend the money, if they gave us $300,000, because even number 3, I think, could be broke up into different dollar amounts. and still make it maybe manageable under today's state budget. I'm just wondering, I don't necessarily have to make a change this year, because I don't know that there's gonna be a whole lot of funding. But just going forward, I think we have to think about that kind of funding scenario.
Well, yeah, and I would have to say, you're reading my mind, because I was gonna, when we were on, ask the exact same question as where we were at on the ownership, resolving that, for that exact reason, if the money's appropriated, if it'd be held up for, any length of time to resolve that issue. So, legitimate question, I think. Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Navarre. Yeah, so Wildwood, the ownership issue, we still don't have a solution in front of us as far as ownership of that. The funding request here is really intended to improve just the existing road. So I think we feel comfortable that we can improve the existing road without clarifying the ownership issue. Where we run into problems if we wanted to do a substantial improvement, including storm drain, infrastructure, potential improvements to water and sewer, and significant drainage improvements that extend beyond the existing prism of the road and existing ditches of the road, that's when the ownership becomes a significant issue. So if by some way we get $290,000 this year, this would be to simply take the existing road and repave that existing road, rather than doing the more significant overarching improvements that are likely needed in that road. I consistently get calls on this road. I felt that it was appropriate to try to get it fixed, rather than continually saying we're waiting on to try to resolve this ownership issue so we can do this larger project. Let's get it fixed to how it is now. It's likely good for another 20 years if we get it fixed in its current structure. Then we can eventually get that ownership issue resolved and then do a larger project at some point in the future. As far as breaking down the number 3 into smaller parts, it's something that we certainly could do. And again, I think that the chances for capital money this year is relatively low. One of the things that we are cognizant of, however, is that the more generic you make your requests, the more flexibility you have to spend those. So if we were to break that third one down into smaller component parts, we'd have to be careful not to do it in a way that would restrict our ability to spend those grant funds if they were issued to the city.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes, yeah, I appreciate your explanation, and just moving forward as we work with our Juneau delegation, the way you explained number 3 and number 2, these are all things that would be covered in your discussions, and we are relying on in this case, the kindness of semi-strangers to go down and represent us with our needs for capital improvements. Is there a chance that you would be going to Juneau to lobby for this and other projects in the coming season?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Glendenning. A trip down to Juneau, I think, would be likely. We made the trip last year. Whether or not it would be focused on this capital, it probably depends on how things evolve during the session. If it looks like there's going to be significant capital funding, then we'd certainly want to make a trip down there to work towards these projects that we've identified here in our capital list.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly support that approach. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think just as Mr. Ostrander pointed out last year, it was very productive to go down there and at least get the language changed for the grant funding for the South Dip. Now we're able to move that and really expand our ability to. So that was definitely well worth the time to go down there just for that. Among the other things we were able to accomplish. Any other?
Just real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman.
I was just wondering on the complaints from the Wildwood. Is that primarily from police or the prisoners in the back unpaid padded seat? You don't have to answer that.
Councilmember Peterkin.
Well, it's funny to say, but I mean, I would think that the state would want that road fixed as bad as we do. They've got to be driving down it probably as much as we are. So I don't understand why there wouldn't be some kind of concerted effort to do it. But I don't know who we're communicating with at that end of things, but it'd probably be good to lobby that a little bit and help get some people at the state on board along with us. But I appreciate this list.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So to reference that, Councilmember Peterkin, we did reach out to the Department of Corrections because they do want to see this road fixed. So we'll continue to work on that with Department of Corrections. If we go down to Juneau this next session, that's something that we'll use to lobby this. I think it provides additional incentive for the state to provide some funding for Wildwood.
Any other discussion on resolution number 2019-82? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Malloy,
Yes.
Councilmember Navar,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtat,
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're now on resolution number 2019-83, requesting the Kenai Peninsula Borough select through its municipal entitlement land described as T6 North, Range 11 West, Section 31, lots 40, 41, and 42, containing 3.75 acres from the state of Alaska for the city of Kenai to enable the continued maintenance and operation of the 4th Avenue Municipal Park, suggested by legal. Councilman or Vice Mayor Navarro,
Thank
or
you.
Malloy rather. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Move to adopt resolution number 2019-83.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2019-83? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. I believe we got Mr. Bloom on the line, don't we? If anybody has any questions. Are you there, Mr. Bloom?
I am, yes,
Okay.
Mayor.
Very good. So bring it back to council. Councilmember Naxtat, or Glendenning.
Yes, is this scenario working through the borough, is that likely to happen? And if so, how soon?
Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Glendenning. Yeah, it is likely to happen. I've been working with the borough's planning department, and this is the first step to the borough enacting legislation to enable Marcus Mueller, who's the land manager for the borough, to make the actual selection. And both the borough and state and the city have all been coordinating to try and get this to happen.
Yeah, thank you, Attorney Bloom. I feel a kinship to this park. When we used to live out in Clam Gulch and things were far more primitive around here, when we'd come to town, we would often stop at that park. This was in the 70s, and it was just a delightful place to go, other than the wild bramble and brush that we lived in out in the homestead in Kasilof. So thank the city administration for lending their attention to this, and of course I support this wholeheartedly.
Any other discussion from council? Councilmember Naxtat.
First off, I hope the hunting is good down where Mr. Bloom is. But I wanted to thank Mr. Bloom for his work on this. I think it's kind of above and beyond what you normally do for our legal here, and pulling this together and within its complexity and everything. So thank you for doing this for us.
Any other comments from council?
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Thank you, Vice Mayor Malloy. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, resolution number 2019-83 is adopted. How are you doing, Jim? You want a break, or are you ready to keep still doing good?
Might be a good time.
That's
We're
what
having a break now. So.
That's what I'm thinking. Let's take a 10-minute at ease. like to call our meeting back to order here. We're on resolution number 2019-84, requesting the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities keep the Silvertip Maintenance Station open, brought forward by Council Members Petty and Naxted. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Petty.
Yes, I'd like to bring forward resolution number 2019-84 for approval.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2019-84? Seeing none, at this time I'd like to pass the gavel to the Vice Mayor and request to be recognized.
Yes, Mayor Gabriel, you have the floor.
So at this time I'd like to declare a conflict that I have in regards to this resolution. I'm actually, my day job, I'm a road foreman for the Department of Transportation, and I don't think that it would be appropriate for me to deliberate or vote on this resolution 2019-84. And I'd ask the chair to make a ruling.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I agree that in rule that you do have a conflict of interest and should be excused from discussion and voting on this resolution.
Thank you.
Is there, seeing nobody from the public that wants to comment on resolution number 2019-84, it's back to council for deliberation. Is there any comment from council? Council member Navarre.
Thank you. I'm kind of twisted on this because I don't have a hard time supporting it in our area, but I have a hard time supporting it when in southeast Alaska there's marine highways that there's not even, it's not open at all. It's not just closed for a few hours. And, you know, at some point, I just don't know where to draw the line or make the arguments anymore on some of these. Because if the state's really looking at the type of cuts that they're looking at, this is only the beginning of what some impacts will happen and it will mean that that essentially the road's open, but it'll be people will stop traveling at those hours of the day as if it was closed. So, like I said, I'll probably support it, but it's with that caveat that we have to keep in mind the other impacts across the state because of these cuts, and it affects us even in our own communities. I mean, even in the Kenai Peninsula, we have the ferry system that comes to and connects us, whether it be through Seward or whether it be through Homer and through Kodiak and that. And I just want us to make sure, I thought of putting a whereas in here and saying whereas we understand and that, you know, these other areas need to be addressed too and find real solutions for Alaska's transportation and safe travel for our citizens. And so that's important to me within our own communities here, that road is connected to the city of Kenai, and the importance of that, both for an economic and everything else. But I don't want to be silent on the impacts across the state and to other communities. In other words, only look at ourselves and not the whole state as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Navarre. Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes, two things. One is, I'd welcome supporting a resolution to the theme that you alluded to, the ferry system specifically. Just to change tack here just a little bit regarding this road between here and Anchorage, as I understand it, just reading from the newspaper, is that there was a shortage of funding as pertained to the motor fuel tax. And that's why this was being, the activities there were being curtailed. And so the assumption is that if we have a little more motor fuel tax, at least the paved part of our road system could be maintained a little bit differently. And I'm not sure, I'm not confident in saying that the ferry system is not supported by motor fuel tax, but I would think that maybe it is not. It's maybe a different funding mechanism, but that's something we could investigate if we want to have another resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Glendon, and Councilmember Peterkin.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor. Yeah, I agree with both of my colleagues. I do believe I also heard, because of some public outcry, that they, instead of it being closed for 5 hours, it's only going to be closed for 2 now, and this thing's moving. And that fuel tax that Jim's talking about is, I guess the state, somebody proposed to leave out all the fuel that they send for to the villages that use power generation for their fuel. So I think that was some of the shortfall, and I know it's hitting the DEC and some of the other departments as well. And I agree with Mayor Navarre. I mean, and I don't know if it's related to the fuel tax. I really don't. There's so many moving pieces right now. It's tough to say, but I don't have a problem supporting it. We use the road, and I guess if we are hurting on money in the certain times of the day, we know that there's a risk that the road might not be plowed as well during those times. I mean, we may have to ultimately deal with that, because I don't like telling the legislature to make cuts and save money and then say don't do this. But tough decisions. This one's probably not too huge, but I don't know that I helped anything here, but that's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Councilmember Peterkin. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you. Just a few things. I would support if somebody had a separate resolution that supported our state airports and ferry systems and dog sleds and whatever else you might do, for transportation. This one is very specific to the road that serves the Kenai Peninsula, and then we're talking about 60,000 people. I grew up here, and I know Tim Navarre did too, and always been able to get to Anchorage when I was a little kid, and sometimes a little slower, and other times, and when you couldn't, it was because of something else, like a rock slide or an avalanche or something like that, or some other deal. But to not provide maintenance, that's something new. I mean, I'm talking about before oil money and all of that. Maintenance was always done, and I expect to drive in winter conditions, and sometimes the maintenance may not be always as good during certain hours, but there's always some maintenance. And what is being done is, first off, the signs that came up if you drove to Anchorage, it said in big orange signs, no maintenance between all these hours. And now they changed that to say winter driving conditions, between here and Silvertip. So anyway, it blocks off the whole peninsula, and essentially, and you would think, and I don't want to pick on Seward, but gee, what if they don't maintain that part of the highway? The Seward wouldn't have any maintenance for a while, but we would, But we're not asking for that. But what essentially is being done is, it's kind of like the spine of the city of the borough is being severed for a few hours, for more than just a couple hours, for quite a while, and I think that they should provide some maintenance up there during conditions that warrant it, and they're not, and they're laying off people and whatnot. But again, we had maintenance before oil money, and once oil money started rolling in, it was going other places. It happened. I think that it needs to be for our best interest, for the whole peninsula, that needs to have some maintenance. You need to be able to get through. So that's really what this resolution is asking for. And by the way, this was also passed by the city of Homer a month or so ago too, and sent on. So I think us collaborating on this and showing the legislature that we're very interested in maintaining the transportation down here is very important.
Thank you, Councilmember Nexted. Are there any, Councilmember Petty?
Yes, I appreciate all the comments of all my colleagues, and this resolution was in no way to discount or disregard our fellow citizens of the state down at the ferry system. This was just bringing to acute attention to our legislators and our governor and our commissioner of our highways the importance and the safety necessary for transportation for our community members here in Kenai and in the area of the whole area on the peninsula. And that was just to bring focus to that, to let them know that this is of great concern for us, and put it in writing. And as far as the signs that they put out that said no maintenance, and now they've changed it to winter conditions. Today on the radio, the person in authority said, well, we did change the signs, but it didn't change anything about what we're going to do. So, so I just want to bring that to everyone's attention too, and I'll be in support of this resolution because I'm very concerned about the travel safety of all the people that travel that road every single day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Petty. Are there any other comments by council? Seeing none, I'd ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Malloy.
Yes.
Councilmember Navar.
Yes.
Councilmember Nextet.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterkin.
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Pass the gavel back to the mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Malloy. Next up, we have action approval, item G5, amending an employment agreement between the City of Kenai and City Manager Paul Ostrander to extend the agreement. And this we took action at it, or we didn't take action. We had an executive session at our last meeting in our. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll just go to.
Put it on the floor.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Move to approve amending an employment agreement between the City of Kenai and City Manager Paul Ostrander to extend the agreement.
Second.
Thank you. And like I said, this is a just for the public here, because it's an amendment to the employment contract that this extends the existing contract for 3 years. His current contract is up the beginning of January 2020, so it would extend it through early January of 2023. So just for clarification for anybody's looking. Any other comments, deliberation from council?
Requesting unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent is requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, we have approved the city attorney or city manager's employment agreement for 3 years. Congratulations, Mr. Ostrander. Under G6, action approval, mayoral nominations for appointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission, brought forth by the city clerk. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Nexted.
Yeah, I move to approve the nominated individuals, Bob Springer and Diane Fikes, for reappointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Request unanimous consent.
Second. And request unanimous consent.
Very good. It's been seconded. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, Mr. Springer and Ms. Fikes are reappointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yes. I'd just like to point out that there were a couple other applicants, and
Oh, yes, very good.
that I just want to thank them for putting in their application, and they definitely look qualified as well.
Yes.
And you know, they were considered by me as well. But
Yeah.
I wanted to publicly thank them for doing that, and hopefully there'll be a place for them.
Yes, and I've asked them to keep their applications current. Councilmember Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you for following up with them. Whenever you have someone willing to step up
Yes.
on the public's behalf, they They should be acknowledged and rewarded, and thank you for encouraging them to participate in the future.
Thank you. I guess unanimous consent was requested. Again, there's no objection. And thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember. Next we have action approval Meryl nominations for appointment to committees and commissions. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Move to approve the mayoral nominations for appointment to committees and commissions as listed in the memo on page 85 of the packet. For Airport Commission, James Zero, reappointment. James Beelfield, reappointment. For Beautification Committee, Emily Heel, appointment. Lydia Craycraft, appointment. Emily Jensen, appointment for vacant seat for term ending December 31, 20. For Council on Aging, Velda Geller, reappointment. Barbara Modig, reappointment. Lois May Nelson, reappointment. For Harbour Commission, Christine Hutchinson, a reappointment. For Parks and Rec Commission, Jennifer Dennis, reappointment. Silvala Kisena, reappointment. And Michael Bernard, appointment for vacant seat term ending December 31, 20.
Second, request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, thank you, Council. And just for clarification, it's spelled, it might sound like Hale, but it's actually Miss Hale. Emily Hale is actually how you pronounce that. So just because I did ask her that when I talked to her. Thank you, Council. Next we have Commission Committee reports. Council on Aging.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. The December meeting was canceled for the Council on Aging due to lack of formal agenda items. What they're going to do is continue to work on their code of conduct procedure, and of course they're in close contact with the city administration on that. The next regular scheduled meeting is January 9th, 4:30 at the Kenai Senior Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Airport Commission.
I covered the Airport Commission for Mr. Navarre on December 12th. They had one new business item. That's what we covered tonight, the vending machine concession to Tyler Distributing, which would expire on the 31st of this month. Tyler was the only bid received, and that was approved. And their next meeting is January 9th, 2020.
Thank you. Harbour Commission.
We haven't met since the last meeting, but I do have some information to report on. I've been in touch with Officer Peters from the U.S. Coast Guard, and he's making plans and asking the people above him when he can come and give us a report on the dip netting and their observations of when they were here. So I've CC'd Jamie on it, and as soon as he tells us when he can come, I'll let everybody know. And it looks like our next scheduled meeting is February 10th. Thank you.
And you have a special meeting on January 6th.
Okay, and January 6th. Thanks.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes, on the January 6th meeting, we will be talking about the total rework of Title 11, the harbor and harbor facilities. Excuse me again. And the idea is that we have a new harbor code, and we want to provision for the future and ask the question, what is the vision for our waterfront going forward? This will be the only agenda on our meeting, and thank you. That ends my report.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Parks and Recreation met on December 5th. The main item on their agenda was a review and discussion of the 2019 DipNet report. There was a real good presentation by Bob Frades, the director, a discussion. There are no recommendations, a lot of acknowledgement and appreciation of the work that all the departments do for the DipNet fishery, and also appreciation of getting the report to review. There was some off-the-record discussion among some of the commissioners about a kindness day that's sort of been some communities outside have been doing, and there was some interest by some of the commissioners in a mural, like a Be the Eye in Kind. Commissioner Consenta was interested in doing some kind of mural for the city at some point, but it wasn't an official discussion item. Their next meeting is January 2nd here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Malloy. Planning and Zoning Commission.
No meeting for planning and zoning, or no report. Their next meeting is January 8th.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, Beautification Committee.
Yes. The Beautification Committee has not yet met, and its next meeting is January the 14th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mini Grant Steering Committee, no, there is no report. On the report of the mayor, pretty short report tomorrow. This evening, I did attend the laying of the wreaths last Saturday at the Kenai Municipal Cemetery, and it was seemed kind of weird to go out there in the middle of this almost Christmas time and laying wreaths when there's green grass around there, because that's the first time I've done that, and it sounds like last year they were waiting through snow to do that quite a bit, and it was actually really, there was a nice afternoon and a nice day and pleasant to do that. But one thing that was requested is, I believe Parks and Rec did the rebar supports that go in that hold the wreaths, and I think they thought there might be several missing, and it was just something maybe I'd ask you, Paul, to follow up with Mr. Frades on. What they'd like to do is have a couple to cover those, but then have maybe a dozen or 20 or something extra for, as service members pass away, they have those, and they're buried over at the cemetery that they have extras that they can immediately put there for to honor the fallen. Then Sunday I actually went over to Kenai Middle School. I got asked to do, they did a door decorating for Christmas for all their classrooms. So I was asked to go over there with Lisa to be the judges, to judge the best doors. That was actually kind of a neat thing to do with some of the themes that the kids came up with all over the board, but really, really interesting. I think they're going to announce the winner over the morning announcements tomorrow. And then just want to let everybody know that we have our alumni game, Kenai Soldotna alumni game, Saturday, 7 o'clock at the Sports Center. So if you're not doing anything that evening, that's usually a pretty good cause. I'll be coaching the Kenai team, of course. And my son, I'm picking my son up in Anchorage the evening before, and he's hopefully going to be running the defense for me on the other end of the bench. So I'm trying to shoehorn him into helping me out there. So he's a Kenai grad, and I don't think he'll be playing. But anyway, that should be fun. So if you're not doing anything Saturday evening, might be a good opportunity. Next we have administration reports, city manager. And I just want to wish everybody happy, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, since this is our potentially our last meeting of the year. So I just wanted to get that in my report also. Sorry about that. Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. A couple things I want to share with council tonight that we're working on administratively that I wanted to bring you up to speed on. One is actually Terry Eubank and I and several other members of administration have been working on a fleet replacement plan. You know, we have a equipment replacement fund or equipment replacement plan that replaces large items like graders and dump trucks and large items that we need to replace at the city. This would actually focus on the vehicles that people drive around. Right now we've got 55 vehicles that fall into this category. I think at least partially, if not a lot, to do with the fact that we've had a tendency to hang on to things a little bit too long here at the city. We get a new vehicle and we hold on to the old one, and we get another new vehicle and we hold on to both of the old ones. what it's resulted in is significant costs for the city as far as maintenance and upkeep on these vehicles. So what Terry's idea was, and one that I've embraced and now we've shared with the rest of the departments, is winnowing that number down to a reasonable amount that we can then capitalize. So we would put money in a fund to capitalize this and put these on a replacement plan or a replacement schedule, so that what we've got is safe, efficient vehicles in the city rather than some of these vehicles that we have now. We've got several with well over 200,000 miles. We've got one with a sign that actually is the floorboard of the vehicle. So we need to do something to make sure we have safe and efficient vehicles and can do it in a way that's affordable to the city. So we're working on that plan. You'll see that come to you here over the next several months as we work through it. Right now, we've just submitted to department heads what vehicles they feel they need and which vehicles they feel are excess to their needs. We'll continue to work through that and hopefully put that in place, and council will be seeing that at some point in the near future. The second one, and another one that Terry and I have been working on, is the capital improvement plan. I've talked to you about this several times, and as the budgets have come out the last several years, you've kind of seen this thing start to come together. We're getting closer to the true first 5-year capital plan that the city's had. It was really created from not much of anything, and Christine Cunningham has been instrumental in bringing that together with help from Terry and also Scott Curtin, Public Works Director, to get that put together. We really need to understand our capital needs so that we can prioritize them and then figure out a way to fund them. As the CAFR that was presented at the last meeting, you saw that if you look at the assets of the city, we've got $230 million in assets, but 98 million of that has already been depreciated, which indicates to all of us that infrastructure is beginning to age, and we need to get our arms around it. We need to figure out a way that we can fund it as a city going forward. Next thing, grants. Couple updates. Elizabeth Appleby was successful in getting a grant for security cameras at the historic cabin site to the tune of $16,800. So we're beginning work on that. That's exciting to see that that's something that they've been asking for quite some time. We're finally able to get a hold of some money to do that for them. We're also working on a grant to cover the down payment for the insurance work that's being done on the city dock and on the well house that had damage during the earthquake. So that's a grant we'll be applying for. The down payment, I believe, is $25,000. And then Elizabeth Appleby's working on another grant, actually related to the hazard mitigation plan, or one that requires the hazard mitigation plan. What this one will do, it's 3-tiered. The first one would be money for the removal of hazard trees on city property. So hazard trees that are on city property, those would be removed, so money for that. Also a program that would allow a cost share for landowners that want to get trees removed from their property. It would allow a match towards landowners removing those trees. And the third part is training for our staff so that they can go out and actually identify trees that are considered hazard trees. And then also some money for advertising for this cost-sharing program for landowners so that they know that it's available and we can get maximum participation from landowners. Also wanted to bring up on Saturday, and Chief Ross provided this to me today, we are participating in Shop with the Cop. It's a really cool program. It's done in other parts of the state and other parts of the country. Walmart has donated $5,000 to Crime Stoppers. That $5,000 is going to be turned into gift cards, 25 cards at $200 each. For kids that are identified by the school district, 25 children, they're going to be able to shop with the cop with these gift cards donated by Walmart to spend some time with those kids selecting Christmas presents. So that sounds pretty cool. So on Saturday, this is going to happen, and I thought it was pretty cool. I want to share it with you. And last one, but certainly not least, is Bluff Erosion. So we've made some progress here. I think at the last meeting, I told you that the request was in front of the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. What I didn't realize at the time is what that indicates is that the Corps has now signed off on our request to do the design. So once OMB signs off on this, we will be good to go. I've been in communications with Murkowski's office consistently over the last week, trying to figure out what exactly this timeline looks like. And based on What they're telling me, we should receive approval from OMB in early February to start the design process for this. I will temper that with approval. I'm not necessarily certain what that means, and based on my previous experience with the Corps, I'm not sure how quickly that means we can get started, but it looks like we will get approval, which is the next big step in this to start the design process, and I'm expecting that in early February. Again, Murkowski's office has been hugely helpful in this process. They're actually inserting some language in this year's appropriation bill, which puts parameters on how long OMB can consider projects from the Corps to limit it to 60 days. So again, they've been very helpful, and I'm excited to see light at the end of this current tunnel we're in, then to enter the next tunnel, whatever that might be. Thank you.
Any questions, City Manager? Councilmember Navarre.
Yeah, are we planning something for the first week in February? I think we should have a full-page newspaper ad and some Facebook stuff and some thank yous to, I think we have to start promote, because this then makes it a real project. Maybe the paper will get it right instead of thinking we hired a drug enforcement officer for $4,000. I'd like to get it, I'd like the city to do a celebration and a thank you. I think it might even help us bring notice to the fact and the legislature hopefully support of funding that. So I think it would tie together pretty good. So maybe the administration can think of something along that lines of what we should do and celebrate that milestone in this particular project.
Very good. Any other questions of the City Manager? Councilmember Glendenning.
No, just heartened to hear the progress that's been made, and thank you for your efforts. And I don't see any new gray hairs, so you're just taking it in stride. And yeah, it's all good. A lot depends on that Bluff Erosion. The whole direction, tone, and tenor of our town is riding on that. So again, thank you for your attention.
Yeah, I guess my comment would be, since we extended your contract 3 years, that we don't push that out 3 years. It's still a priority, right? Thanks, Councilmember next.
Yeah, it definitely is, and if it starts to slip on the how big a priority it was, at our last meeting when we had that hazards mitigation manual book, whatever, of all hazards, and the Bluff being one of them, of course. It did have the mapping in there that shows, the current location of the Bluff in 20 years and 2057 or something like that. And it's so astounding how far back that is. And that's really not that far from now. It's something that we really need to get working on now, to protect the properties, the city assets and everything as it moves back. I like maps anyway, but that map really, that display really emphasizes what we're really trying to do here. So, thanks, Paul.
Any other questions of the City Manager? Seeing none, is Mr. Bloom still on the line? Okay. City Clerk, Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I have nothing to report, but I did print out the information about the Blessing Bag project. And it is a gallon-sized Ziploc, and it contains snacks, travel-sized toiletries. And we are collecting items now and putting them together on January 25th. And I have a list of the items that we are collecting, and if you wanted to donate or give me money, I'm happy to find something to spend it on. And that's all I have.
And maybe, I know you've sent it out once already, but I would suggest maybe after the first of the year, blast everybody again with that, just so give everybody a reminder, because I know sometimes I kind of forget about those things, and I appreciate you informing me on those. Any questions of the City Clerk? Seeing none, we'll move to additional public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to address the council at this time? Oh, yes. Mr. Bloom, are you on the phone? Okay. See no additional public comment, we'll move to council comments, and we'll start with Councilmember Peterkin.
Well, I'd like to thank our police department for all the work they do, and David, the work you do. Thank you very much. Terry, and definitely Scott Curtin with the work with the city water and sewer, and thank you, Paul. And I'm glad we renewed your contract, and I hope everyone has a good Christmas. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Petty.
I just wanted to extend a warm Merry Christmas, and I'll see everybody next year.
Thank you, Councilmember Glendenning.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying Merry Christmas, and 2020 will be a good year for us. I'm also heartened to hear that our city staff and management is working on grants for some of these projects that we have. You know, if you've ever been berry picking and you have your bucket, you don't fill everything off of one bush. You know, and get a little bit here and a little bit there. That goes a long way to stretching the other public monies that we do have. On December the 9th, I went to a dog park meeting, and what we have is I'll just read into the record some of Bob Frady's mid-month report. But the volunteers on the dog park project are adopting a vision statement to provide a safe, accessible space for socializing with the canine community. The meeting on December 9th was for the purpose of setting 3 goals. And once the goals are established, those are still in moving parts. The most important thing is Michael Downs from the National Park Service will be working on developing a concept plan to be discussed with the group. The goals actually is how the park is to be set up and functioning. Laying out places for humans, places for various sized dogs to interact, even the idea that you'd have a ported gate. In other words, you wouldn't open one gate and dogs could escape. You'd come in, you'd have a place to close the gate and then open another into the entrance. And the idea is humans and dogs socializing together. And I think we're off to a slow, but we're off to a good start. And again, thank Bob Frady's for his leadership and city management for supporting this project. And then you're talking about hockey. It's about 40 years ago. Your dad tried to recruit me for a Rusty Blades thing, okay? And I had just fresh teeth put in from previous escapades on the ice. And my wife put her foot down, and I'd never seen her go like this before. Well, later, but that was the first time, and said, no, you are not going to ever play hockey again. So anyway, it's kind of comical, and the time goes by, but hockey is important. I enjoy it, and I hope to be there. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Glendenning. Councilmember Navarre.
Thank you. I too just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and a safe New Year. And lately, with having the little guy, I went to 3 concerts. The high school had their concert on Sunday. Mountain View first, second, and third graders had their concert at the auditorium in Kenai on Monday, and then Kaleidoscope had their concert last night there. So 3 nights of concert, but we have some very talented young children coming up, and it's kind of fun to watch some of that. Sometimes I didn't make as much time for it, but I was glad I did this time. So, and with that, I'll end my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Our last meeting, December 4, was really long, so I didn't have that much to say at the end, but I did want to mention back about in November, AML, I did enjoy going to that. That was really beneficial. And I did have a breakfast with Leslie Cruzen, who is our our student representative in 2005, 2006, and he's now with Oric, Harrington, and Sutcliffe. He's a bond counsel in Seattle. And so he was up there because a lot of his Alaska work is with the Alaska Bond Bank, and so he went from us, graduated from KCHS to Cal Berkeley, graduated from there, went to New York University, graduated from there, did the grind in New York City, Manhattan for about a year and a half, and then escaped to the West Coast, which segue into, Councilmember Navarre's comments. I really like your idea about a thank you, appreciation, and also kickoff event on, once we do get the approval for going to the design phase, we're going to have to, I know, but he's talking about financing and everything, and hopefully we won't need that much from the bond bank, depending on, grants or whatever, but I do like your idea very much. Also, this, like the mayor said, this is our last meeting of this calendar year. I think we did really good work this year, all of us, and appreciate the support that we get from the city clerk, the city attorney, and the city manager. And I'm also happy that you agreed to extend your contract with us. Also, and definitely like a shop with a cop. What a fantastic thing. Thank you, Chief, for doing that. And so everyone, Merry Christmas. Have a good one.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Malloy. And just like I see Les cruising up that I've seen him last couple times at AML, and he was he graduated with my younger daughters within a year or two. But he when they were I think freshmen in high school, maybe sophomores, they got in a softball fight or a snowball fight rather, and he ended up breaking my daughter's arm. So every time it was like a buckle fracture, but enough for she had to get a cast. But I have to give him a hard time or that he's still owes me a couple grand for that one. No, he's a good guy. I like Les. Councilmember Naxon.
Yeah, thank you. Tonight we had in front of us we had half dozen, three-quarter of a dozen of our city officers here, and I really appreciate their interest in that first ordinance 3098, 2019, coming here. That means a lot to me, and I hope the chief that's sitting in the back there will kind of relay that too, because I just really appreciate that kind of interest in something that's going to affect them and hopefully in a real positive way. So anyway, I do appreciate them taking their time to come here. And I wish I could shop with a cop, but oh well, by the way. But anyway, the only other thing I have is just to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody, and I look forward to next year with us.
Thank you. I guess I'll get back to my job here. We have no executive session scheduled, no pending items, and seeing no other business before this body, we are adjourned.